Welcome back to another innovation review. Today we're going to be checking out the Discover1 from Velotric. Before I jump into the review, just want to ask you guys to like and subscribe. Thank you. Let's go. First, let's talk about the looks. The Discover1 has a very refined look to it. My first impression of it was that it was, high quality, and the closer you get to it, the more you sort of see some of those details. Whether you're looking at the battery in the down tube, the nice fenders that it comes with, or just the way that they manage the cables here, there's really only cool things to say, I think, about the way that it looks. Now, we have the high step version. It also comes in a step through version, and the color we're reviewing is the indigo gray. Now, the one thing you'll notice is that this is a mid-drive frame, so hopefully in the next iteration of this bike, we will see them offering a mid-drive option, but right now it looks like that's where they're housing the electronics for this particular model of the bike. But yeah, from a looks perspective, I think they got a lot of cool colors. It's got a cool vibe. I see it doing pretty well. Next, let's talk about the motor. The motor we have here is a Velotric branded rear hub motor. Now, this one is 500 watts and 65 Newton meters of torque. This is also a class 2 e-bike, only getting us to a top speed of about 20 miles per hour. Now, when I was out there doing the ride test, it seemed like it was around 21, 22, but it's definitely not all the way up to that class 3, 28 miles per hour. Now, they say it has 65 Newton meters of torque, and that's pretty fair. I didn't feel like it had the 80 to 95 that we're sort of used to seeing on the larger 750 watt motors. So saying it has 65 Newton meters of torque, I think it makes sense here. As far as motor noise goes, as you guys know, it's very on par with electric motors. It's got, a little bit of an electric sound, but as soon as you're driving around near the cars, you really can't hear it. Very on par with all the motors we've seen. Next, let's talk about the batteries. The battery we have is this lockable and removable LG Samsung 48 volt, 14.4 amp hour, 692 watt hour battery. That is a mouthful. Now, because we've got this 500 watt motor here, this is a fairly decent sized battery, that 692 watt hours. So we should be able to get anywhere between 50 to 65 miles if we are treating it right. It should take about 5 to 6 hours to get a full charge here, and a few things to note about the battery. As I mentioned in the look section, this is one of the parts that I think is pretty cool. It fit like a glove in the down tube. It's got a very sleek design to it. Big fan of the way that they house this. Big fan of the functionality here. The charging port is also very interesting. Got this fun charger on here that we don't normally see. Normally we see the XLRs or the smaller cables, but this one is, it's a fairly unique, you don't see it every day on this level of e-bike. You can click the button on the top to see what sort of charge you've got. Now, it doesn't have bars, it's just a couple different colors, but it is a good indicator like, oh yeah, I got some battery or I've got no battery, in case you forgot if you had charged it or not. So all in all, battery is pretty dope here. Next, let's talk about the brakes. The brakes we have here are these unbranded hydraulic brakes. They have 100mm rotors both on the front and the rear. And from my experience, these things are awesome. Right out of the box, these things were great. I did have to adjust the front one just a smidge. It was rubbing a little bit on the rotor there. But other than that, these things work really well. In fact, they have such stopping power, you really can't just slam on them. I mean, I almost feel like you've got enough power to really just stop the bike almost, dead in its tracks. When we were out there doing the ride test, it was very easy to lock out the tires. In fact, I had fun sort of, going on the grass and sliding around and pretending it was Fast and Furious, but you definitely have more than enough stopping power here with these brakes. Next, let's talk about the gears. Now, for all the nice things I've said about this bike, this is probably going to be the only section where I have what I would consider to be a con, and that's going to be with the ghost pedaling. Now, with this bike only being able to go up to 20 miles per hour, you would think that they'd be able to get the gearing right here. And for me, right about that 16, 17 miles per hour, even in the top gear, this one has, 7 gears to it, I was getting a bit of ghost pedaling. Now, if you're going to be using the throttle all the time, that's something you would maybe never even notice, but for a bike like this with these smaller tires and it's got a little bit more of a pedal-like vibe to it, I found myself wanting to pedal more, and then once I got past that 16, 17 miles per hour, I wasn't really able to put in the right amount of work. So that's something that I would just say to Velotric, look at that gearing, see if you can't get that gearing ratio just a little bit better so we're not getting any ghost pedaling after that 16, 17 miles per hour. Up on the right-hand side of the handlebars, we have got our Shimano SIS Index thumb shifter. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of these ones. They are super easy to use, very intuitive, and they haven't let us down. And heading on to the back, we have got the Shimano Tourney derailleur. Nothing wrong with this. This is a Shimano name brand part. It is entry level, but for the prices we're paying, getting a name brand here is pretty sweet. Next, let's talk about the extras. Most of the extras here are pretty apparent, and the first one we're going to talk about are the fenders. So the fenders we get both on the front and the rear. They are a very hard, very thick plastic, which, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of that, because if you have those metal fenders, they tend to scratch and then rust, especially when you're in a spot that has so much humidity like Houston, Texas. So for me, I'm a big fan of these, and I thought these were pretty sweet. The one in the rear has an extra mounting point, as you can see over here underneath the seat tube. And so for me, I thought that was a cool little attention to detail. The light up here in the front is fairly bright, and it's integrated into the battery, which is nice to see. So this is one of those lights where I probably feel okay with riding this thing around at night, even if this was my only source of light. And then in the rear, we have got the tail light. Again, this is integrated into the battery, which is awesome. And we do get brake signaling. So once we go and pull on the brake levers, it's gonna flash so people know that we're coming to a stop. So an excellent safety feature to have here. Next, let's talk about the suspension. The Discover1 is a hardtail, meaning we've only got suspension up here in the front, and these are going to be our hydraulic suspension front forks. Now, these front forks are pretty sweet. We do have some adjustments here. They do have 80 millimeters of travel, which isn't terrible, but where you're going to be riding this bike, for the most part, that is more than you'd need to absorb some of those bumps and sticks and anything you come across here in the urban jungle. The next part of suspension we like to talk about are the tires. So the tires we have here are these 26-inch by 2.5-inch tires. Now these do come with a puncture-resistant liner, which is dope. The other thing that's cool that you'll notice here is the brown walls on these particular tires. Now on the website, I didn't see that as an option, but in my opinion, this looks a lot cooler than just the regular old plain black tires. The next part of suspension we like to talk about is the butt suspension. So right up here, we have got the Velotric Urban Comfort saddle. Now this saddle was pretty comfortable, fit me really well, but as you guys know, a good saddle is all about matching that saddle up to your sit bones. Everybody's sit bones can be different, so it's really just about matching up your butt to that saddle. So for me, it worked. It might not work for you, but just something to keep in mind. Next, let's talk about who this bike might be for. Now, as I had mentioned, this does sort of have a pedelec vibe to it, so I see people using this a little bit more on the commuter side, sort of the casual cruising around. Also, you probably won't be able to do any extreme trails or anything like that. I mean, of course, I did. You guys know how we do it around here. But for the most part, this thing is going to stick to well-paved bike trails, sidewalks, the road, places like that. Now, if you're getting 50 to 65 miles, then this does bring it into that commuter capabilities, because most people aren't commuting, 25 miles to work each way. At least people who are going to be considering swapping out a car for a bike. Now, if you did want to turn this into a good commuter, you would have to get a rack on here. But Velotric does offer a rack for the Discover1. You can get it from their website. It is right now currently $69. So for another $69, you could turn this thing into quite the commuting machine. So we have talked about the specs. We have talked about the main use case that I see for this bike. And now it is time to head out for the ride test. Hey guys, welcome to the ride test. We're out here on the Discovery1. We got it turned on. Now, whenever we turn on, it is in pedal assist level 0, which I kind of like. It's nice that, we're going to turn it on and it's going to be in pedal assist level 0, kind of a safety feature. The throttle doesn't work as well. Again, just a couple of the little safety features as far as functionality goes riding this bike. But this is a ride test. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Pedal assist level 1. And let's go ahead and just use the throttle. Let's see what that does for us. So pedal assist level 1 gets to about that 8-9 miles per hour. Let's go ahead and put it in pedal assist level 2. About 12.3. About 14.4. Still getting some speed, probably about 17, and then pedal assist level 5 is going to take us to that top speed of 20. Now, as it said in the description, this is a Class 2 e-bike, meaning that it's only going to take us up to that 20 miles per hour. I haven't jumped into the advanced settings here to see if that's something that we can alter. Hopefully we can. That would be nice to give people the option of taking this to Class 3 mode if they wanted to. But for a 500 watt motor, this thing does do some work. So actually hitting a little bit over 20. 22. So we can get right to that 23. Give us a nice little stop here. It's our favorite little hill here to test out the hill climbing capabilities of this thing. All right, so let's go ahead and pedal test level 5. Just hill climbing up here. Barely doing any work. Just sort of keeping the pedals going, and it got all the way up the hill. Very nice, Discovery, very nice. And we got some nice brakes here. Giving us a nice controlled descent. Now let's go ahead and hit that hill with just the throttle. So we made about 3/4 up with just the throttle, but as soon as we give it a little bit of pedal here, and then it's easy to get up there. So not going to tackle this hill with just the throttle, but as soon as you put in a little bit of effort with the pedaling there, which was basically just turning my feet essentially at that point. And let's go ahead and take it off-road a little bit. Conditions out here are nice. We don't got any puddles, no real mud. Just able to fly through here. Definitely is a hardtail. And these are not the conditions you would be riding this bike on, but when you're doing a test, it's nice to sort of take it out of its natural elements. All right, that's a decent test, but let's not do that one. So as far as control goes, it's able to handle the, we're doing these sort of like twisty, fairly thin trails here. It's able to handle that just fine. Well, let's pop across the road here and then we'll do a little bit of a braking test. Okay, all right. Do the old skid in the grass test. Oh, easy peasy. Whew. That's the way to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get it going up to about that 20 miles an hour or so and do a little braking test. Probably about 20 feet on that one. See if we can do a little bit more of a controlled test without blocking out the tires. Get to about 20. And let's go ahead and do another braking test. Nice controlled. That was probably about 12 feet or so right there. Now, one of the things about this bike, the frame's great. The motor performs adequately for what we would expect out of a 500 watt motor. But the gearing here is something that I think probably needs a little bit of attention to on Velotric's part. Because I am in, top 7th gear here. And once I hit that 20 miles per hour, you really got to be booking it. And from a gearing perspective, I shouldn't be having to move my legs this fast at this speed. So that's just something I'd like to see improved on the next model of the bike. Maybe get that gearing nailed down a little bit more, so 20 miles per hour is a little bit more of a comfortable speed, as I imagine most people will probably be traveling about that fast. So if that was the way I had to travel all the time, that might get a little bit old after a while.
But you know, after having the bike for, you know, a little bit here, that's pretty much my only complaint. You know, we've got the locking grips, we've got hydraulic brakes that do a really good job. We've got a thumb throttle, you guys know I'm a fan of that. Nice big display. I really like the front forks here. I could probably adjust those to fit myself just a little bit better, but I know that possibility is there. And yeah, that's really the only thing after testing out that I'm like, you know what, can be improved? The gearing, just a little bit. Just let me, just let me pedal nice and easy and get that 20 miles per hour.
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us for another review. This has been the Discover1 from Velotric. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. Love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.